What's going on, everybody? I'm Scott Oots, and today I have a guest, Ethan Taylor from South Carolina. Ethan is an investor over there. We're going to spend some time just talking about real estate, talking about things he needs help with, just having general conversations. So, Ethan, welcome. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you, Scott?
Dude, fantastic. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to have some fun. So. Let's dive into it, man. Tell me about yourself.
Oh man, just first of all, I'm just excited to be interviewing the Floyd Mayweather of real estate. Is how I feel right now. So
I think I need to get some more muscles and stuff in order to be able to live up to that title.
but yeah, man. So yeah, I've been in real estate for just over 4, maybe close to 5 years now. I started out in some other businesses. Some were good success, some were terrible failures. The typical entrepreneur journey, right? Ended up with a decent amount of capital and actually started out rehabbing before I really even knew what wholesaling was. I was buying off the MLS. Deals weren't going so great. So decided to try wholesaling and made that work. Been consistently doing deals, averaging about 3 a month. So yeah, I mean, wholesaling's great. Developed a lot of good buyer relationships. So the wholesaling side's going really, really well. Just wanted to kind of reach out to you and get some top level gems, I guess.
All right. So you bought off the MLS and that didn't work for you, huh?
Oh man. Well, I'll put it this way. I overpaid and overimproved. So, and I've had some conversations with some more successful flippers who've been doing it forever, and they told me that I either need to learn to underimprove or go with a higher ARV, flips, right? Just to give me more room to make a house pretty. Because it just kills me. I know guys in my market, they do carpet, paint, some new light switches and make 40 grand. And to me, it's like, man, that's just, can I be proud of that? So I guess I struggle a little bit with that side of the business.
It really comes down to, do you want to make money or not, right? And
Yeah.
this is the hardest thing, because like for me, so if I went and flipped a house right now, if I took my wife to go pick out tile, right, I'd be like, all right, you need $2 square foot tile. She's like, but this one's pretty, right? And it's $20 a square foot. Like when we first started, we were flipping, and that's kind of what her mind went to. And I started saying, hey, here's the thing. Yeah, $10 doesn't look like a lot, but when you need 1,000 square feet of it, then it's a lot. So there is that fine line between over improving and doing what you need to do to still get top dollar, because we always want it to look the best, right? Which is fantastic. Those are the houses that are going to sell really quick. But the hard lesson on flipping properties is your friends that are doing the paint and carpet, the new switches, they're probably making what you're making, because those houses are still selling for around that same price, because it all comes down to appraisals, right? If it doesn't appraise, you're probably going to lower your price. And you putting in a nicer countertop or a nicer cabinet or a more expensive tile, do you really think that's going to make that appraiser that knows nothing about it come in and appraise it higher? Probably not.
That's what caught me. My very first flip ever. I had it sold to a retail buyer at 122, and the appraisal came in at 90, and that's all we need to say. So it's that one just didn't go well, man. I'm talking, it was gorgeous, marble countertops in the bathroom, soft closed doors in the kitchen, like it was to the nines, right? But the appraiser just didn't care. So this most recent flip that we just completed, it's going really well. It looks like it's going to be a profitable deal for us. So finally got one to work, right? But yeah, just been mostly focusing on the wholesale side because it just seems to be a lot more successful. And I got a big sales background anyway, so that side's pretty easy for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about, 2020 just ended, right? So what did your wholesale business look like for 2020? Deal flow, income, stuff like that.
So I have a sister company and we kind of have like a unique setup, but me personally, 21 transactions successfully closed.
Okay.
So my sister company does a lot of flipping, a lot of creative finance, Pace Morby style. So yeah, so we do a lot of different stuff, but I'm kind of the acquisition company that fronts. And when I lock up a contract, they'll take a look at it and see if they want it. If not, we'll ship it to the buyers.
So are you, just so I understand the setup, are you part owner in that company?
No, so it's just a total sister company. Like I'm 100% owner of mine. Those partners are 100% owner of theirs. It's kind of like a silent partnership. handshake agreement. They cover some of the marketing and stuff like that. And I cover some of the operations. And so it kind of works out really well. We met in 2019 and they're like, hey, we're both pounding the same sellers. Why don't we just let us fund the marketing? You do the acquisitions, and we just do a lot of stuff together. So it turned out pretty cool.
How does it work as far as, do you get a profit share of the flips they do or anything like that?
Yeah, so every deal we kind of take it on a deal by deal basis because our ARVs are all over the place down here. So it could be 100,000 ARV or it could be a 300,000 ARV. So like on wholesales, we'll split the wholesales if I lock them up based on their marketing. Obviously not if I lock them up based on my marketing or my efforts. I'll lock up deals for subject to. They pay me a fee up front for locking up a deal that's going to be a subject to. We did a lot of those last year. So it's just kind of like it's very case by case.
Okay, but on the ones they actually put construction into, flip to sale, are you getting a percentage of that? Or are you
not on the back end? No, I'm basically making my fee on the front end. Essentially what I do is I wholesale it to them. I lock it up and wholesale it to them.
Yeah. So obviously I'm really digging in because I kind of just want to make sure I understand it all. So playing devil's advocate on the other side, do you think that their funding of the marketing is bringing you in deals that you couldn't get on your own?
No, and I knew you were going to want to unpack that. I'm glad you are, because I had a couple questions about I'm wanting to expand on my own into a secondary market. And so I had some questions about that. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I was doing some financials and looking at it and saying, well, in regards to the wholesale side, the market, I think it may actually, the relationship may have actually cost me some money. But I'm also looking, long term, because I do want to build a big flipping business, and I'm learning a lot from the guys. They've successfully flipped a lot of properties, so I'm learning a lot from these guys on the flipping side, the operations side. So there's some paying tuition, give and take in the relationship, and there's some great guys too.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying terminate that relationship, right? I don't know enough about it to say that. I guess what I'm kind of getting at it, if you're getting the training is one of those things to me that you can't put a value on, right? If you're getting the knowledge that's worth that to you, no one else can tell you otherwise. Because dude, I paid 50 grand for coaching when I started, right? So people look at me like you're nuts, but $50,000 got me almost, about a $5 million business this year. So would I make that exchange every day? Yes. But did my friends look at me like, dude, you're absolutely nuts? 100%, right? I'm wiring this money out to this guy and I'm like, I don't even know who he is. So that's the thing, is it's like, only you can know the value it brings. But my input on it is we're in a hot market throughout the entire US right now. And let's just say you lock up a deal at 80 grand, right? You sell it to them for 100. So you're making a $20,000 wholesale fee on it. I am going to venture to guess that if you would have had a buyer's list built, you may be able to go 10 grand more on your wholesale fee, because you're basically creating competition between those buyers. I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table just from the first look of this by going with those people. So you have to decide, let's say you did 21 deals last year, right? Let's just pretend like all 21 of those went to them, right? So if you could have gotten an additional $10,000 for each of those deals, you're looking at $210,000. So that's the stuff to look at. You got to say, was the value that you got from the people you partner with worth your pocket being emptied by $210,000? That's the question. And you don't have to answer that, right? But that's the question to ask yourself, because partnerships are fantastic on a lot of things. But there's a certain point where a partnership works to be successful at one point, but as your business shifts, it may not be. And that's the thing to look at. You have to say, is my knowledge worth $210,000 in 2020? If it was only worth 50, then you've got to decide, okay, how do I still continue to partner with these people without ruining the relationship, but also build my list to other people, because $210,000 is a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of things to look at with that. And I know you probably didn't want to talk about this thing the whole time, so we won't. But while something might look good at one point, it may not be the most fruitful area. So Something to consider with 210 grand, let's just say that all came in, you sold to other people. If you put 100,000 of that into your own marketing, do you think that by investing that 100,000 would have potentially brought you an additional 300,000?
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah. So 210, right? Let's just call it 200 minus 100,000 into marketing. It brings you an additional 300. I mean, that's $400,000 in profit missed based off that, because we're always reinvesting in our business. So now don't go to these people and be like, Scott said cancel our deal. That's not what I'm saying. You have to decide the direction you want to go. It's your business. It's not mine. If it was mine, I would probably really thoroughly look at that partnership. And I don't think you're getting the return you think you're getting just based on numbers. So maybe you restructure, right? Maybe if they do flips, maybe in that case, you don't do a wholesale fee to them. They take the property, they flip it, and you get 50% of the flip.
Right.
So that would become more fruitful, because instead of a $10,000 or $15,000 wholesale fee, you might make 40.
Right.
Now, is that beneficial to them or not?
Right, for sure. So it just has to be weighed from both sides. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you helped me unpack it for sure. I mean, I've got some other buddies who are really successful in the business. I got a guy who's consistently 6 figures a month in North Carolina, and he he raises his eyebrow at it too. For sure. And I think you'll start to understand a little bit more as we continue to unpack. But I tried let's go back. So my first wholesale deal ever, and my first 2 deals were way too easy. And that got me in, and it sent me down a bad road. Okay. So I had plenty of money in the bank. I already had the brand new Denali truck, the fancy watch, right? From past businesses, I was already good. And then the first 2 wholesale deals come in relatively easy. I think I spent $2 grand, made back 18,000 or something. So for newbies right there, if you're struggling at your first deal, like, thank God for it, because when they come too easy, it can send you down a really bad path. So the first thing I did was bail on my little 1-room, what do they call them? Executive suite offices. Went and got the big office, went and got the in-house employee, $2,000 base plus commission, loaded up on overhead. And that didn't work out either. So that was a very expensive experiment. And it was, yeah, so dumped a lot of money in that office, and that, just, so all that to say is, I guess I'm a little gun shy being on my own, and which is so weird because I've done it before and I've been successful, right? I mean, I started a digital marketing agency, made 30 grand in my first 45 days. Like, I've done this before. It's not new to me. But just like I remember dumping $3,800 in a direct mail marketing campaign, and literally like zilch, and just on top of the office, on top of the employee. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, trust me. I know, man. Right outside of that wall right there, that's $100,000 a month operation, right? So if we have a bad month, guess who still has to pay that $100,000? This guy. So that I completely understand that. And marketing shifts too. I mean, you figure when I first started my business, I was spending about $45,000 a month on Google PPC, and my return was fantastic. And literally, I went to bed one night living high. Google changed an algorithm that night. I came in the next morning and I literally spent my entire budget with nothing. And Google for years took me to recover because of that change they made, because you had to rebuild basically everything. So it just shows that, one quick change as a business owner, you're taking a hit. Do you think my employees out here really saw much of that hit? Not really. I mean, commission, yes, but not for the expense part of it. I still had to pay that expense. And that's the part that sucks about a business owner, right? You get the rewards, but you don't really, you have to suffer the consequences of things too. And employees, it's more like they get the rewards, but they only hit to a certain level. Well, you're going down to the negative on something. They're still sitting here, and it's stressful. So, but here's the thing. You've done it before. So you got to start saying, why is it that you feel like you can't do it now? And I'm not saying empty your bank account and go put it all on red, right? I'm saying start budgeting for that and work your way up. I mean, my first mail campaign was only like 500 postcards or something like that, right? And then I built up from there. So say, okay, I've got X amount in my account. I am gonna take this amount of money, right? Maybe it's 20 grand. And I'm gonna set this 20 grand aside and earmark this for new marketing, not current marketing. And I'm gonna say this $20,000 has to last me 3 months, 90 days. Because I know I'm a good enough salesman that if I market out consistently for 90 days, that 20 is going to turn into 100 or more. So don't spend it all at one time. You're spreading it out over a 90-day period. Throw it in like an Excel sheet or a Google sheet and break it down for how much you're going to spend each month. And the thing about direct mail, right, you got to be consistent with it. So if you're going to send a 1,000-piece direct mail campaign, you want to send that 3 times within those 90 days. Because you're probably not going to get the response on the first time. The first time is going to be all the old people that are sitting at home want to yell at you for sending a postcard. You may not get that in South Carolina. You guys are too friendly. California, okay. They must be the California people that moved there. But that's the thing. You've got to keep consistent with it, because your second mailing is when you're going to start really seeing more of those motivated people. And
I got a really important question I want to jump in there with. So I originally joined Wholesaling Inc., the Rhino Tribe, right? So their mail piece, so that's the mail piece that brought me the easy 20 grand, whatever, right? And so I went back to it, I don't know, 6 or 7 months later, because I had done mostly telemarketing in between. And then the response rate was horrific. And I spoke to another guy in my market. He was like, yeah, man. He was like, and he's also from the Rhino Tribe. And he was like, look, we don't send that postcard anymore because it is beat to pieces. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, there's a guy, his name's Ryan. He's like successful, owns a big portfolio. He has like this company and it does handwritten looking things. They're $1.30 a piece if you buy 1 million of them. That's really expensive, but he claims to have a 1.6% response rate in California for one of his clients, which sounds crazy. So I don't know which way's up with direct mail. I was going to do a custom mail piece, but then there was another guru who I feel like is certified. He's the real deal. And he was telling me, look, don't try to reinvent the wheel. You're going to get killed. Just send basic as much as you can, as cheap as you can, as fast as you can. So I don't know which way is north with direct mail. I don't know what to believe or what to try.
so how many people, just estimate, do you think are in the Wholesaling Inc. group?
Oh man, thousands.
So how many states we got in the US? 50, right? So you've got thousands of people, and those thousands of people each tell 100 people. Then pretty soon, everyone knows about this postcard. They're saying, use this postcard. Look at how many people know about it, right? And so let's just use texting, for example, right? When texting first was being beta tested, me and there's a guy named Jared Vidalis were the only two doing the compliant texting on Lead Sherpa at the time. Dude, we were sending out like 10 text messages and we'd get a deal. Like, I was spending like $400 a month and bringing in like 200 grand.
Yeah.
It was so easy. Like, click, deal, click, deal. I mean, we're just like, what is going on? Like, this is amazing. We're literally pooling money together and offering the owner of Lead Sherpa $1 million to not launch for a year. Give us a year. Because here's the thing. Texting now is one of my worst marketing channels as of closing 2020. You know why? Because everybody's doing it. So, same thing with that direct mail piece. If everybody is doing it, I highly doubt that's a mail piece that Wholesaling Inc. sat down and designed on their computer. It's one they just pulled from a mail house, right? So not just Wholesaling Inc. is using it, many other people are using it. So when it comes to follow the leader, follow the advice, not the individual, not the little minute details. So if they say, hey, mail once every 4 weeks, choose your own postcard and mail it. Now, the handwritten one I've heard a lot about. That sounds really expensive. If you check out Yellow Letters HQ, they're in San Diego. I think they're much cheaper on that handwritten postcard. They've got little machines that handwrite all that stuff. I think they're much cheaper. So check that one out. I've heard it's got a great response rate on that postcard as well. But again, it's in the early stages. So if you want to hit it now, because the response rate's going to start doing this because sellers become numb to it. And that's what you're going to start seeing is you're going to start seeing a lot of numbness as these things grow. You can take it.
Doing it for us too. I wanted to say, I think we were at maybe $600 a deal for SMS. It was rocking and rolling. I remember when COVID first started hitting, I think it was February, March, April, those 3 months, like SMS crushed it, like leads, so many leads, we were drowning in them, right? And now it's not as much.
Yeah, and what happened is the carrier started blocking the messages. So it's not so much sellers still not wanting to sell, it's just there were so many messages being sent to these carriers that it was catching the spam filters. So the carriers basically said no. Now, Jason with Lead Sherpa, he's done a good job working with the carriers. So has Batch as well, saying, hey, why is it these aren't going through? What words are being caught in these filters? And they've done a good job adjusting both those businesses to make sure the deliverability happens. However, I mean, all it's going to take is a flip of a switch from the carriers because you got the government telling these carriers, you need to filter cold calls. You need to make it so people aren't being bugged, right? So as they do that, it's only going to get harder and harder. And people are scrambling right now because a lot of people stopped all their direct mail, went just to text. Now texting's dying. What do? They're back to square one. So for me, I like to diversify my marketing, right? I got direct mail, I got cold calling, we're still doing text. We're doing all those different channels to make it so if my PPC issue I had before that just dove overnight, if that happens again, at least I have something to keep myself going. And I still sent direct mail, even though PPC was so high for me at that time, because of that all eggs in one basket mentality. I didn't want to have that. So I said, I need to make sure I still send direct mail, even if my response rate is so low. I mean, we get less than 0.5% of a response rate in California on direct mail. And I'm sending 45,000 a week. So you can imagine how many of these are sitting in a landfill. But what do? I mean, that's a good marketing channel for us. And now direct mail has become a better marketing channel. Now that people have left to go to text and RVM, they're trying all these new things and people have like that, squirrel mentality. It's like, squirrel, someone said to go this way, someone said to go that way, and people are just jumping around all over the place. And by them doing that, it's made my business better because all I'm doing is sticking with what I'm doing. And then I'm going to wait until they leave the next thing for the next best thing, and I'm going to go to that. And I'm always going to stay almost one step behind on marketing, but I'm picking up everything they're leaving. And it actually works really well.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, we did cold calling for a while. It was decent. Like I said, but yeah, SMS is definitely dying down. And we've noticed that the carriers are blocking the messages and its response rates diving. So yeah, we're definitely going to have to, I guess, figure something else out with that. I wanted to ask you this. The guy that I know that is consistently 6 figures a month, what he does is he pulls what he calls just super wide data and I think Donnie Ruffin does it too, right? Just calls everybody. Like if you own a house, you're getting a call or whatever. How do you feel about that as opposed to the hyper targeted? Because as you scale, like you're not going to do 20 deals a month from Driving for Dollars. I don't guess.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of guys that do. Just I don't, but I know a lot of guys that do. Pace Morby is actually huge into that door knocking and Drive for Dollars stuff, and he actually gets a lot of deals off it. But as you're starting to scale, you're going to realize, so I'm in California. I have unlimited houses, right? I literally will never touch every house that's here. But a lot of people start running out of the drilled down data, right? The more distressed type of data, especially in a lot of markets. So I actually really like a wide list. I will put a filter on it of some sort. I mean, it could be a simple filter like, hey, I want wholesale deals off this, so I'm going to throw like 30% or more equity on the filter, and then I'll start going out to those people. Now, if I was going for creative deals, obviously I could just say, hey, throw the equity filter out. But my problem is I have so many houses that if I was to literally just say, pull all of California, I mean, my computer would crash. So it all depends on each market a little bit. I have some friends that are in Birmingham, Alabama, smaller market. So for them, they could literally pull everything there and start cold calling it. It just depends on where you are and how you want to do it. It ends up being a lot of calls for those cold callers as well. Like I have 6 cold callers, so they're each calling about 4,000 a week. So we can roll through data really fast. It just depends. The larger the list you pull, are you actually getting through it or are you not, based on what your cold callers are doing?
Right. Yeah. I think he's got like 7 or 8 callers, I think. So yeah, that makes sense. I think one thing we struggle with here in South Carolina, at least, is I think it was in October of 2018, maybe, when they passed that law or something where it says you can't use county tax data for commercial purposes, and ListSource pulled South Carolina. You can't get ListSource in South Carolina.
Oh, really?
So, and PropStream, I had always been told that PropStream was hit or miss state by state. In South Carolina, the data is not ListSource quality. It's just not. Because I remember, and that goes back to that first mail campaign being super easy. That was about the time that ListSource killed South Carolina, and I started pulling from other sources, and then the productivity of the mail went down. So, yeah.
Does PropStream have South Carolina?
Yeah, PropStream has South Carolina. We pulled a lot of leads from it. And like I said, we've done deals from it, right? So, I mean, we pulled lists and skip traced it and blasted SMS and done plenty of deals from PropStream. But the direct mail just didn't seem to do near as well once I shifted over to the new data. So, and there's the unknown equity that was doing really well. We couldn't get with PropStream or didn't know how to pull, I guess. So that was a little bit of a challenge. Then there was fancy list that I was sold like 30, 60, 90, 120 from, I forget, Citricata or something. That turned out to be terrible, for us at least. So that was a struggle, just blowing a lot of money on data, trying to find good data. So, but yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle. So that's why we just recently bought, I think we bought 200,000 something records, credit bureau data, phone number already appended. So we're just going to hit that and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to go. I mean, you're going to hit ups and downs and all that stuff, right? And the counties and cities are going to throw more and more curveballs at us as we go forward. It's just going to continue to happen. And we have to constantly be adjusting our business for that. That sucks. You can't market to tax delinquent. However, you can if it hits a different list. Can you still pull the tax delinquent list?
So get this, I spoke to a more experienced wholesaler in my market, and this conversation happened probably a year and a half ago. And he said he got the tax delinquent list the time before they killed it, right? And he said it was terrible because we live in a tax lien state. So people get a lien, and that lien can stay on there for a while. There's no urgency, right? It's the county still takes your house at some point, but it's not like a, hey, pay up or else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different too, I feel like. So, another guy I talked to in North Carolina who was doing really, really well, 5 to 6 deals a month. I think he said his was all vacant houses and driving for dollars, those 2 lists, and he was being consistent. So we may actually have to add driving for dollars back in by default. We may not have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt because those are houses that aren't showing up on those lists, right? I mean, the majority of the time. So if you start the Drive for Dollars campaign, you start getting some people out there driving for you, see if you can get some leads in from that. I mean, dude, I know some guys doing really well with that, but they can mix the Drive for Dollars in with door knocking. So if they see a house and they're trained, have them go knock on the door, right? And their whole point in knocking on the door is not to close a deal because they're not fully trained on that. Their job is to see if the person has interest in selling and set an appointment with you. So you're basically creating lead generators out there. The Drive for Dollars plus the door knocking. And I mean, that's great. If they see a house that's fantastic, why leave? Come back, give you the list, you market to it. I mean, if they can knock right there on the door and set the appointment, do it. So that'll make a big difference in some of the stuff because you're going to be bringing in leads that aren't showing up on standard lists.
Got it. Okay. I think I had a little bit of a limiting belief about that due to COVID. Like, there's going to be people screaming at you, like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
So
Wear a mask. So they should always wear a mask going up to the door. Um, don't wear a hat, right? Because it just makes it like you're like hiding yourself. So wear a mask, stand back from that knock and stand way back. So it's not threatening when they open that door up. If you're like right in their face, you're wearing a mask and a hat, most likely they're not going to open that door. But step off the porch, step, down there when they open the door, act very friendly, and see if you can get the person to have a conversation. I mean, you got probably about 10 seconds once you knock on a door and they answer it to sell. So otherwise they're gonna be like, no thanks, and then they're just gonna close the door. So try that, see if you can get that to work. I mean, tax delinquents never been, even in California, never been a huge list for me. There's just not a lot of motivation because we live in a state where it's like, oh, here, have some extra time. Here, have some extra time, right? So that doesn't work. We need some type of motivation for them to want to sell. Well, then the night before the tax auctions, when they call us and say, all right, I'm ready. And it's like, dude, you're screwed. So not a whole lot you can do at that point. But these people wait a little bit too long.
yeah. Let me ask you this. I want to transition a little bit because you mentioned a topic in actually the call that inspired my DM that ended up in this call. You mentioned your business operating on the 3 accounts. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah. So it's basically based on inbound wholesale fees, right? So every time a wholesale fee comes in, we set aside money for taxes, set aside money for profit, and set aside money for expenses. So our expense account's the bulk of it because as you grow, expenses become a huge part of your business. So every time a wholesale fee comes in, we set aside 55% to the expense account. So I have basically 4 total accounts: income account, expense account, tax account, profit account. Income account is where every single bit of income comes in, whether it's a check being deposited. That's where I give wire info to our escrow and title companies. The money, the only place there's ever a external deposit is into the income account. So 20,000 bucks comes into the income account. I put 55% of that into the expense account. I put 30% of that into the tax account. And then the remainder goes into the profit account. So if you start running into a problem where your expense account is too low, the first place you pull from is that profit account because you don't have the profit, right? Now, by pulling from the profit account, your expenses are less, or your income's less, your expenses are more. So now your tax account could actually shrink if needed. But you should be able to, with the 55%, run your business off your expense account, and you're still building a cushion in there. Because your business expenses should not be 55%, right? You're only putting 55% in there for months where you have a bit of a down month because you know the business is a roller coaster. So if you set aside, if you say, well, my expenses should only be 30%, so I'm only going to put 30% in there, you are going to have some months where you have a higher bill, right? I pay some marketing some months heavier. So I set 55% in there just to make sure. That's actually, so there's a book called Traction. And that is actually kind of the traction mentality. That's how Traction teaches you to kind of set things up. It's a really good book to read. But yeah, I mean, that helps run the business. So what happens is right now, right? 2020 ended. My taxes are being done. My tax guy is going to come to me and say, hey, your tax bill is X. You need to send this into the Fed. Now, most business owners that have one account go, oh shit, I just put that into marketing. And then you don't have the money. Now you're requesting extension. Well, I have the money sitting in the tax account. And the beauty of it is, if I had 30% setting aside, my taxes might only end up being 20%. I got an extra 10%. So now that money, either I decide, does it go into profit account? Or do I say, you know what? I had this money already set aside. I've dealt without it. Do I put this extra 10% into marketing to try to increase this year? And those are kind of the choices you start making. But it's a good strategy to make sure you don't get that moment where you're like, oh my God, how am I going to pay this tax bill? Because that's scary, really scary. So.
Right. Okay. So talking about managing expenses a little bit, kind of jump started my brain on this topic. So let's say that I've got a list of, I don't know, 20,000 records that I want to send mail to, right? And so I can only afford to send 5,000 pieces a month, just using round numbers. I know I've been told that it's good to hit all your leads every 30 days. But if I send 5 a month, it's going to take 4 months to touch the 20, and then 4 months before that batch D is hit again. So what type of sequence would you do? What would you do?
So for distressed lists that have actual clear distress, I want to hit those every 4 weeks. Lists that are more equity filter, not really the distress, those ones there, about every 6. So what you could do is you could set your marketing so based on your budget, you're mailing every 2 weeks or so, right? But smaller increments. So you're mailing each, it's going to take you a while to get through it. But make it so you're not just pulling off 5,000 and just hitting those for 6 months. You want to start mixing in some of the others. So take a spreadsheet and just start building your marketing sequence based on your budget. Fit as much as you can in by making sure you're touching as many people as you can. And if that means that you mail that list every 8 weeks so you can fit one in the middle or something, then that might be a better option, because the more people you touch, the better chance you have of sales. But you don't want to wait, 6 months between mailings of lists, because you just don't get the consistency.
Got it. Okay. So it's a very worst case 60 days.
Yeah. And I mean, I would recommend trying to make 6 weeks the maximum between it. But you can play with it, go 6 to 7, something like that. It all is based on your budget. But hey, if you would have brought in that extra 210 grand we talked about earlier, it wouldn't even be a conversation.
Oh man, excellent point. Excellent point. So with that being said, I want to transition into another topic. So I'm thinking about expanding into a market where my wife and I are actually planning on moving to sometime in the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. And it's close, hour away, and it's a major metro, and I'm scared of it. Just to be quite honest, I'm not going to get any value if I'm not vulnerable, right? So I'm scared of the bigger market. Because around here, I don't deal with a whole lot of competition, man. I think I fight for a deal, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But I'm going up there, I'm thinking about, okay, marketing spend and massive competition. So what do you look for when going to a market? What's your advice on it? I mean, is $1,000 a month budget for direct mail in a major metro really going to get any traction? What do you think?
I guess there's a couple ways to look at it. Do you feel like with your current market that you have maxed out your ability to make more money?
No, I guess not.
Okay. So if you have not maxed that out to the point where you can make everything you can make, I mean, you're adding a new market, but you're splitting your time. So you may end up seeing a drop in what you're doing in your current market, because now you're having to focus on a different market, a new set of marketing, new set of buyers, all this kind of stuff as well. So you're adding almost another business. I don't look at expanding into a new market like it's my current business. It's a whole different set of business, right? So you've got to say, do you physically have the time for this? And do you think that will dilute where you're currently at? If you are, you may say, okay, before I go into this market, I want to hire someone to help me with some of those leads. And that might be the direction you go to plan. When you plan for expansion, everything can't come on you. Or are you truly expanding? Because I'll tell you this, if you found a way to get more than 24 hours in a day, I would love to know. But you only have so much time in a day, and you can't call sellers at 3 a.m. So do you think you physically have, okay, you said you're married. Do you have kids?
No, not yet.
Okay, so you're married, right? And if you were to start working 18 hours a day, how would your wife feel about that?
Oh, she wouldn't like it. Oh, for sure.
So you've got to really think through, because the time it takes right now to run your business until you start getting that more on autopilot by hiring and doing things like that, if you're adding something in, let's say your current business is 9 to 5 and you can't get anything less than that without losing money. Where does the time come in to do the other market? Is that 5 to 9 afterwards? Because that means you're working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
I mean, I do have a lead manager, and that's made a big difference. Recently brought him on. That's another thing that my buddy that does really well taught me is he's got a lot of VAs in his business. He taught me how to source them. I mean, we pay $350 an hour for this VA, and excellent quality, better than a $8 an hour Upwork VA for sure all day. So I'm slowly growing the business with using VA labor, which is helping a lot. Just that, because I heard Pace Morby explain it one time. He broke it down. People are wondering how a VA with a hard accent could get deals, and he's like, timing and consistency. He was like, they will be way more consistent than I ever will be. So I'm learning that lesson as well. So I'm bringing in that help for sure, and it's helping. But you're absolutely right. I mean, even me as the closer and the dispo guy and the transactions guy, of course.
Yep. Yeah. And Pace actually has VAs closing deals for him. He actually has a sales team of VAs, which is not that common, right? I mean, I pay my sales team out here is probably going to make 150, 200 grand a year. I mean, if I could pay a VA to do the same thing for 40 grand a year, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So you start looking at that and say, okay, yes, that is much cheaper. Do you close deals over the phone or in person mainly right now?
2020, I think I maybe signed 2 contracts in person. Everything is, but that was a limiting belief for me too. Like I would see the gurus talk about closing deals all over the nation virtually through DocuSign. I was like, never. And then now I do it like clockwork, and it's the easiest thing in the world. So, and maybe you want to like poke at me a little bit on this, because I'm curious about something. You talk about the spreads being higher if you get in person. But I also hear from some other really successful guys that the efficiency of not driving back and forth adds a deal or 2 or 10. 6 of one, half dozen the other. What's your feedback on that?
I mean, if I was getting $500 more going to the appointment, I would just close it over the phone. But I mean, my company is about $30,000 more going to the appointment, right? Or $30,000 less on the contract. So that's worth the drive. If it was $500, no. Sacrifice the $500. Know you negotiated as well as you possibly could, and move on to the next deal. But for that much money, it's worth my team going to that appointment. That's a pretty good pay for drive, right? So that's kind of my feeling on that. At least by you closing the majority over the phone right now, you're setting yourself up for that new market. Because the reason I'm asking that question is if you said, hey, I closed 90% in person, okay, now you're going to a market that's an hour away. How are you going to do that, right? So my suggestion was going to be start to learn how to close over the phone more to prepare yourself for that new market. I know some guys in DC, they do about 9 mil a year wholesaling. They went to a new market and they were like, what the hell is going on? Why aren't we closing deals? Well, because they were so used to closing in person in their market, now they were having to close over the phone, and it's a completely different way of doing things. So they're like, all right, we need to regroup, start closing over the phone here, and then expand into that market once we know how to do it. So everything you're doing now is preparing you for that expansion. But you've got to start saying, okay, all these roles that you're in right now, you're making good money. So all these roles you're in, how can you start getting some people to help you to take some of these tasks off your plate? Because if you're good at acquisitions, because you said many times you're good at sales, right? So how can you fill the other things and have somebody take those responsibilities over? So you can start, let's just say you spend on coordinating transactions. Let's say you spend 10 hours a week on that, right? So how do you get somebody in here that takes over that 10 hours a week? Because that 10 hours allows you 10 more hours to talk to a seller, right? So you're freeing up portions of your time. Now, since that person only has 10 hours a week, what else can they put on their plate that you have that is taking you away from the ability to sell, right? So start figuring that out. I would almost do just write down everything you do during the week. And once you write it all down, you're gonna go, okay, which ones, if you say, okay, you are worth $1,000 an hour, what task is beneath $1,000 an hour? What task is the $5 an hour task that by you spending an hour doing this, you're losing $5,000, right? Or you're losing $1,000. You need to start figuring out what those tasks are. Then you start saying, okay, out of this list, I can take this item and put it over here, this item and put it over here. Now you're building a full-time job for somebody. Now, whether that's a VA, an in-person hire, even your wife, right? I mean, you can start figuring out where is it you need the help because you are a closer. And all of these items you put over here are not closing tasks. Now I think you're going to find that you clear up 20 hours of your week.
Excellent point. Yeah.
Now what do you do?
More efficient with the schedule. I can spend more time closing, more revenue, then I can delegate more. So it's just kind of a spiral in the right direction.
Yeah, there's that fine line between, because obviously hiring someone creates overhead, right? And you look at that and you're like, oh God, now here goes the overhead. But what if you paid someone 35 grand a year to start, someone in-house, 35 grand a year to start, and it brought you in an extra $300,000 because you just freed up half your time.
Mm-hmm.
That's worth it. That's what I've done here. My overhead's 100 grand a month with marketing, a payroll, all that stuff. But I freed up my time to focus on building the business. So I'm focused on the next thing we're doing to drive leads to the business. So I have to be able to free myself up to focus on growth. If I'm not doing that, then how do you grow? You can't build more time in a day. You just can't. I've tried every way possible. You can't, right? I've got a wife at home too. And if I worked from 7 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night, I probably wouldn't have to go home to a wife because I wouldn't have one at that point. So you have to time block your day based on the things you're doing and start figuring out where can people come in and help you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point to focus on because it takes extreme commitment. Because I think when I went all in, I was very comfortable with how much money I had in the bank, and I wasn't at a level of extreme commitment, and that hurt as well. Openly admitting, wasn't working as hard as I should have. Was still doing deals, but was breaking even, losing a couple thousand here and there, or we'd have a bad 2-month stretch. So yeah, no, that's yeah.
How much time would you say, just an estimate, every single week based on 40 hours, knowing you're probably working over that, based on 40, how many hours would you say you spend on non-sales activities every single week?
Here lately it's been nuts because we changed podios. We were using Hercules from Carlos and Sal, and the bill was just so high. We were like, clip that expense. So we built out our own podio, and it's amazing now, and it's all great. And but it was revenue generating activities took a steep dive because I'm also the head tech guy. So it's I'm picking up what you're putting down. I need to audit my schedule. I need to focus a lot more on revenue generating activities for sure.
What does your wife do? Does she work?
Yeah, so she actually works her face off. Actually, just finished up school. Finally got her big girl job. CT technician, X-ray, the whole deal. She got all the certifications. Just got her full-time job, benefits, everything. So she's finally, But that's another thing too. I carried her with no income for 2.5 years. So she's finally over that hump, which is going to help me a lot. Just having her taken care of, and now I can focus more on the business and stuff. So
yeah, that's a good job. I was gonna say if she's like an admin somewhere or something, bring her over and have her work with you, so it helps build that, right? But obviously she's got a good job she's trained for, and so that wouldn't really work.
Yeah, she's so intellectually exhausted by the time she gets done with what she's doing at the hospital. I mean, she's in traumas and people are dying, and she's supposed to be scanning them. So when she gets home, she needs to rest, right? So
yeah, don't add to that. Don't add to that. But yeah, I mean, it might be time to start really looking at that and start figuring out what does it cost to hire someone? Do you want a VA? Do you want someone in person? What is it you want in the direction you want to go? And then start looking at that. I mean, my VAs, just so you know, if your VA is that good and you like your VA that much, pay him a little more. And the reason I say that is because you know how hard it was to train a person, get them going and doing what you want them to do. I pay my VAs very well. My VA that's been with me 5 years, she makes $9 an hour now. I mean, for her, that's killer. Most of my other ones are about four bucks right in there.
We have a good bonus structure. So every time we lock up a contract based off their nurture efforts, we call it, we pay them a decent bonus and a Christmas bonus and all this stuff. So,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, just make sure you're taking care of them, because even if you bump that person to $4 an hour, really, what's that going to do to hurt you over a month? It's so small, so minimal, but to them, it's so big. So those are the things to look at, because I've got a VA that's 5 years, a VA that's 3 years, and one that's 2. I don't think they're going anywhere. We make sure that they, number one, feel like part of the team. They're happy, they're paid enough. It's one thing to get someone and go, holy crap, I found someone at $2.50 an hour. Well, yeah, but is that person going to stick with you if something else comes along, right? That's the thing I like to look at. I hate training new employees because it costs the company money. If you had to go train somebody else tomorrow, so let's say you pass all these tasks off to someone, you pass it off to someone named Bob, right? You got Bob's on board, you're passing all these tasks off to Bob. It's going to take you so much time to train that person. You need to make sure that you train them right the first time, you pay them fairly. That way you don't lose that person and have to do it all over again, because training is frustrating. It's not just, hey, here you are, go do it. No, it's hands-on, everything.
I'm doing it right now. So actually, one of the most amazing VAs that I had ever seen in my entire life, I actually lost him in November. So was paying him his bonus structure. He seemed to be happy with his rate, but he ended up getting a job over there to help supplement his income. Another thing, I wasn't talking to him frequently enough. He was still making his calls, nurturing leads, sending them over to me. We were still locking stuff up, so it's still working well. But yeah, one of my more experienced buddies who has a lot of VAs, he was like, Ethan, you got to talk to him at least 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, make them feel like family. So I learned that lesson. So I found a new one. She's great. And I'm going through that training process with her and just making sure she feels like she's in the office with me, right? She's part of the team.
Yeah. And do like Zoom calls or something. That way you can at least see their face and stuff, and they can see your face. So like on our VA's birthdays, we throw them on Zoom and the whole team goes on there and says, thank you. Like Christmas, same thing. I would love to fly my VAs to the US if that's ever possible again. I would love to fly them here, and like we're near Disneyland, like have them bring their family, pay their way, take them to Disneyland and just wine and dine them. I mean, even if it costs me 20 grand to do that, I mean, the experience and the memories they're going to create is going to be absolutely amazing. So that kind of stuff is just, I always love to go over the top for anyone that works for me, because I want someone to go, oh, I was offered a job, but no way in hell am I leaving what I have here. And that's what I want to do with my team. And that's something that's made it so no one's quit. I mean, 3 years, no one's quit. So, but like I said, 100 grand right on the other side of that wall every 30 days. So, yeah, it's tough.
From here, I want to roll into the dispo conversation. So I was always told, especially from Wholesaling Inc., cash buyer employee, don't do it, whatever. So I have found it to be very comfortable. I hate using that word to describe it, but it is, and very efficient to operate with a small handful of very good, very rich, very consistent buyers that always close. Some of the time they just windshield cruise it right by. Yep, okay, sounds good. Send me the assignment. They sign the assignment. I hit send and it's back as soon as my phone. I mean, it's so efficient, right? So, but I feel like, maybe I'm not making as much as I would be. So tell me what to do.
You're 100% right. You're not. I can almost guarantee you that right now. But so you're in the position I was in about 2 years ago, where I said, man, I love these buyers because they keep coming back. But you got kind of a scale you got to look at. So what I started doing, because I said, I know I'm leaving money on the table, but the last thing I want to do is start pissing them off. So I actually created a second buyers list. So I said, okay, buyers list A, which are my VIPs that have been with me a long time. They will typically pay $200,000 for this property in particular. Now, what I want to do is I want to start building buyers list B. And I started adding any new buyers that came on board to that list. Nobody else went on the original list. Now, what I started doing, 1 out of 3 properties I'd put to buyers list B, but I'd put it out at like 215, 220 instead of the 200. I knew this list would pay 200, but I wanted to see what this list would do. So if I didn't get offers where I knew this list would pay, then I put it out to this list and sold to somebody on that list. But they didn't know I was putting the deals out. I did it in the background. So I wasn't pulling the deal from them. I just never put it out to them because I was testing the market. Pretty soon I started realizing these guys were paying 210 to 215 and they were locking those up. And I was like, wow, okay, this is a big difference. So then I started kind of raising the price a little bit on the original buyers list. And they started throwing a fit. And I'm like, man, okay, well, what am I gonna do? Do I ruin the relationships of what I have going here? Or, what side, what's the best way to go? So I continued this test, and pretty soon my buyers list 2 had like hundreds of people on it that were fighting over deals. Buyers list 1, they started finding properties in other places. Our relationship was still good, but they were like, hey, what gives? We're not getting as many properties. I say, hey man, here's the deal. I'm starting to get a lot of overhead as a business. We're growing. Obviously, I value our relationship so much and I don't want to ruin that relationship. But here's the thing, I'm moving 200 properties a year and I got people that are willing to pay $15,000 to $20,000 more at a minimum for each of these properties. I want to work with you, but my challenge is I've got overhead, I've got employees, I've got trying to increase my marketing. And I understand you want this return because it's so pretty, but how can we get you to help me? How can you get to this level? And some of the guys started raising their offers based on those conversations. Some guys told me where to go. Relationships will come and go, right? Don't kill a relationship until you have some other stuff going for you. But you need to start making sure that you are selling your properties or assigning your properties to buyers that want to pay the most. Now, here's the other thing. Here's your caveat you got to kind of really look at. When a market goes down, who do you think is going to be there? You need to weigh those buyers. Now, there is an advantage to keeping that original buyers list if you think those are the people that are going to buy in a market that is kind of doing this. So don't ruin those relationships. We still talk to a lot of those people. There's still a ton of houses they buy from us, but I don't sell to them unless I make sure that they are going to be the highest offer.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So if I'm reading between the lines, you're treating your business like a business and you're making your decisions with a calculator, not your emotions.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be somewhat emotion in some of it because, there's some guys that were some of my first buyers on my list, man. These guys were buying probably 15 houses a year from me, like from the get-go. Great people, man. I love these two. I always love going to properties and seeing them. I always kept my relationship going with them. They don't buy from me anymore. And that was actually a really hard thing, man, because I was like, I love these guys. We joke around, we call, I took them to baseball games, things like that. And I still respect the hell out of these guys. But they needed a return that was much more than what somebody else is willing to pay. And here's the thing, this is where you got to not feel bad. If they bought a house from you to list at $200,000, right, and they wouldn't pay you more, but they happen to sell the house for $250,000, do you get more money on that? No, they already bought it. Do they say, hey man, you know what, I sold this house for more than I thought, I'm gonna kick you back an extra 10 grand? No. So that's the example I had to start using for some of these people. We started tracking everything we sold a house at, the price we sold it at, the buyer we sold it to, and then how much they sold it for. So when some of these buyers say, hey, I need this return, I say, hey dude, on average, you have sold every house that I have given to you for 12% more on average. So you could still pay 12% more to me. But what I need from you is only 6% more. So let's work this out. Let's get this deal done. I see what you're selling these at. Now, they could come back and say, well, I spent more in construction. I understand that, man, but you didn't need to do $4 a square foot tile. You could have brought that down. So you can work that out with those people, having genuine conversations, and you're probably going to get the majority to start paying a little more. But track everything a buyer sells. Based on your construction estimate, how much do you think that person made on that house, right? And then you go back and use that in your negotiation going forward. It's all public record.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, thanks for that. That's really helpful. Transitioning to another topic I had was, and this no tinfoil hat, I'm not running for the bunker, but you're hearing a little bit about, Jerry Norton put out some videos on it, talking about how some of these title companies are not wanting to insure the title on double closes. There's some stuff like that. He's having them a seller sign a flipping addendum, stuff like that. So, because I was actually kind of excited when I heard that wholesaling was being frowned upon a little bit, because I was like, well, we got the money, we can double close and keep rocking, right? But the title companies are saying, hey, look, we think people are going to come back and say they know they got screwed and sue us. So what are you seeing as far as like moving forward and just dealing with stuff like that, and just kind of preparing for some of the changes? Just want to kind of look forward a little bit.
I mean, changes are always going to happen, right? We assign 100% of our deals. So we don't bring money to close. Even on deals where we have a $100,000 spread, we still assign. So we don't have that problem with assignments. Double closing, one of the main things that they're frowning upon is so you got the seller to you contract, the A to B, right? The B to C where you're giving it to your buyer. A lot of people are using those buyer funds to close that first transaction. And that's what people are typically referring to as a double escrow. And that is what is becoming frowned upon. Because you're buying a house technically, right? Because you're closing on it with that double close, but you're not bringing any funds into escrow or title. So that's where more of the attention is around, saying, hey, you can't use these buyer funds to fund your first escrow. You either need to fund it with your own money or transactional funding, a temporary hard money loan, whatever it is you're doing. What you're doing as far as actually bringing money in, that's two different escrows. Or we use escrow. You may be a title state, but if that's the case and they're throwing a fit, use two different title companies.
Yeah.
So
we use escrow as well.
Okay. So I mean, in that case, then you can use two different escrow companies or title companies, because it doesn't matter. They're two different transactions. But I mean, if you can assign, it's cleaner and it saves you money.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay, closing costs and stuff twice.
Got it. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit again, I don't have a formula that I follow. What's your guys, and it's probably totally different for you guys out there, but like the wholesale formula, like I don't ride off of a percentage of ARV. I just go as deep as I can go, right? So I don't focus on a maximum level offer and because I just want to get as deep as I can get it. So, I mean, what's your take on that?
So here's your thing. There is no formula, right? I mean, everyone always says 70% minus repairs and you're safe. So I go out to like San Bernardino County where it's $80,000 house. I go out to LA County where that same house is $600,000. I can't go and take that formula and put it into each of those areas, because LA County, somebody's looking at different things. They're looking at, can I build another unit? I can sell as high as 90% in some of those places. Where San Bernardino County, I can't. So for us, we basically just built a little calculator internally saying, hey, here's your high comp. This is what our buyer is going to sell for. Then we put in the construction estimate. It accounts for repairs. It accounts for, I believe, 6% commissions and holding costs for the buyer. And then it says, based on that, the buyer wants to make about a 10 to 12% return after all that's said and done. It calculates that in. And then it has a number where I put my wholesale fee. What do I want my wholesale fee to be? Then it says, this is what your offer is. So we've built that internally for my team to use, and it works well. But if they put in a $20,000 wholesale fee, they're shooting for a $40,000 to $50,000 wholesale fee. But it gets them an idea on where they need to be. Most times they don't even take that calculator to the appointment with them. Now they know in their head what it is they're doing. So it's based on totally what you want your fee to be. But if what you're doing is working, keep doing it.
Got it.
Just try to negotiate better and get the price lower. That's it.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So recapping back to a point where you were talking about me going to a new market and not maximizing my current market. I want to throw an extra monkey wrench in there and see how you respond to this. One of the biggest reasons for the ambition of going to the new market is a higher average ARV. So in my market, flippers are selling between 90 and 185, give or take. And if you look up on, Zillow, or Redfin, it's going to say our average home sale price is like 270 or something like that. But that's diluted with new construction. Like if I dumb it down to just what people are flipping, I think I know maybe 3 guys that flip stuff over 300,000 ARV in my market. So I just feel like it's not quite as easy to do volume at the higher fees. So that's another reason that I was thinking of transitioning to the major metro. What's your thought on that?
All right, so let's just break that down. So you already said more competition, more marketing costs. So your cost per deal in that other market will probably be higher. Now you will make more on a wholesale fee, but if your deals are few and far between, right? Say you can get 3 deals in your current market at a $20,000 spread. You can get 1 in the other market at a $60,000 spread. Yeah, the $60,000 looks nice, but if you could still get the same amount of income coming in your current market through more deals, is it really a difference, right? So let's say you got a $60,000 one out there and 3 $20,000 ones in your market. Let's say something happens on title, a $60,000 one falls apart. What are you left with? 0, right? Let's say one of your $20,000 ones fall apart. You're still left with 2 $20,000 deals. So what I would recommend, because I think you're getting to the point where you got to get somebody to help you. What if you started training an acquisitions person? What if you started doing this? What if you started training this person to take over your current market? Then, as they're producing, now you're starting to market to the new market, which is going to be it's going to be harder negotiations because you got competition. You're the A player, they're the B player. So you're going to take you as the A player and put yourself into closing in the new market. And you've got your sales rep performing in the current market. Now you've got best of both worlds. I wouldn't put a new person in that new market because the competition is going to be tougher. Yeah. What do you have to lose? Bring someone in on a commission basis and start getting them to close deals.
Yeah, commission only, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Depending on your laws, right? California, they have to make a minimum here. So you can decide what your laws require for pay. But I mean, if you started bringing them in, you started giving them some commission, smaller commission on the deals that you're helping them close. And then once they're off on their own, now they're getting a higher commission level.
Got it. Okay.
Try something like that because I'm all about big spreads. If you can go get a big spread, fantastic. But don't forget about the little guys because it hurts more to lose a $100,000 deal than it does to lose a $20,000 deal. I promise you that. It hurts your heart. You're like, oh my God, I just lost $100,000 that I fought for 3 months on and it falls apart. So don't forget the little guys. If you can still expand your market and make it work, see if you can have somebody start closing some of these for you.
Yeah. Man,
Yep.
That's really helpful, man. Thank you so much. You've helped me unpack a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what it is. All it is talking through shit you already knew.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, I don't think there's anything on this call that I have told you that you didn't somewhat know that you just needed to hear from somebody else. And that's really all these calls are. And that's why networking is so important, right? You talk to other people in the industry and you start learning. You're learning, but you're realizing more than learning. It's stuff you already had here and it's stuff you've already thought about, but it's just how do you put it in place? And that's the stuff you got to start working on because you're shifting, you're in a visionary mindset right now and you're trying to shift what you're doing and it's not that easy. So, All right, we got to wrap it up because I got another call coming. So let me start closing us out here, and then we'll go from there. So, all right, I hope everyone's enjoyed this today with Ethan. A lot of good stuff we talked about. I can't wait to see where you go. I think that after this, you're going to start making some big moves, and I think you're going to definitely double or triple what you're doing just based on some of this stuff. So I hope that's the case. Ethan, thanks for joining us today, and it's been fun spending this hour talking with you, and hopefully everything that you've had as a struggle is a help to other people that are watching this as well, gives them their aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking this, I knew I needed to do it, but it is time to actually put it in place. Remember, if you guys have thoughts don't really make you money unless you take action on it. So you got to take action on these things. You need to make changes to your business on a weekly, monthly, you need on all daily basis, really. You got to be making changes in order to be able to get yourself to that next level. If you keep doing exactly what you're doing every single day, you will get exactly the results you have right now. So it's time to always grow it. Ethan, thanks for joining us. Everybody, I'm Scott Oots. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for our next one. We'll see you later.